So good afternoon, everybody. I am Nina Nirsha Malisak Lemire. I will be the moderator of this session for Web3 community engagements. And for today, our guest, we are honored to have Ms. Nicole Nguyen, co-founder of Duelist King and APAC Down, here with us. She will share her perspective and help us to understand the significance of Web3 community buildings. So please welcome Ms. Nicole Nguyen. Hello, สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะสวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ How are you today?
I'm doing great. And you, Nina, and everyone?
I'm good, thank you. Where are you zooming from?
So I'm zooming in from Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam.
Right. So สำหรับคุณนิโคลนะคะก็คือตอนนี้ซูมมาจากเวียดนามนั่นเองค่ะเราจะยิงตรงคำถามไปหาคุณนิโคลเลยนะคะว่าสำหรับคุณนิโคลแล้วเนี่ย Web3 Community เนี่ยคืออะไรแล้วการสร้าง Community ใน Web3 เนี่ยมันประกอบด้วยอะไรค่ะ So Nicole, can you please share your perspective with us? How do you define Web3 community and what makes a community?
So I think this is a great question to start. And first of all, thank you very much to the organizer of Thailand Metaverse Expo for inviting me. It's also very thrilled to come back to Bangkok this time, but virtually. I spent actually 1.5 years in Bangkok back in 2018, 2019. I also saw a lot of like familiar faces here, my crypto friends back in the day at the event. So hopefully I can come back to Bangkok very soon, you know, just to discuss collaboration with my new project on Web3. So I'm building this Web3 community. It's called APAC DAO, and it stands for Asia Pacific Decentralized Autonomous Organization. So this is actually a new community. So we just started back in March this year. And it used to be called Ho Chi Minh City DAO first, because we want this place to become a open and also, you know, like a friendly place for people to come in and get connected with the Vietnamese community players and the stakeholders in Web3 when they come to Vietnam. But then things got escalated. So more people outside Vietnam started to join the group. So for now, we've got over 800 members from 15 countries, you know, discussing everything like the ups and downs, the inside and out of Web3. And I'm happy to see that this is going to be a open, also non-biased community for the Web3 players to get connected with the others in the Asia Pacific region. So I think coming back to your question about Web3 community, I think each person might have their own kind of definition. But to me, with Web3, it's actually, you know, it's more about the transparency and the share value among the members. So I think with Web3, it does give us a very powerful tool, you know, with the token economy, with the transparency of blockchain and related technology, that people can actually get together and share some value. And basically, once people can see the values that they share, once they can see that the incentives are transparent and are, you know, decided by the community rather than a centralized party, I think that's where people would actually feel that they belong to the community and they become an owner of the community, rather than just, you know, being there and, you know, like follow a certain rule by a centralized party. So I think to me, with Web3 community, it's about the shared value that people bring and about the governance that makes sure that everything in there is transparent, is shared, and also is agreed upon the consensus of the whole community. So as long as we can maintain this kind of core value, I think people would be able to see, you know, different use cases, and also can see a lot of values coming out of the Web3 community itself.
Thank you very much, Nicole. I may just translate a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
โอเคค่ะ so คุณนิโคลก็บอกว่านะคะWeb3 เนี่ยสำหรับตัวเขาเองเนี่ยก็คือความโปร่งใสแล้วคือการที่เมมเบอร์แต่ละท่านนะคะมาพูดคุยแชร์สิ่งที่สำคัญก็คือมี value ร่วมกันมีไอเดียที่เหมือนกันนะคะแล้วก็สร้าง community นี้ให้เกิดขึ้นค่ะลำดับต่อไปคำถามที่2นะคะเราจะถามคุณนิโคลว่าในฐานะที่เป็นผู้สร้าง community เนี่ยคุณนิโคลเนี่ยสามารถที่จะทำให้สร้าง engagement แล้วก็สร้าง ทำให้ community เดินหน้าไปข้างหน้าได้อย่างไรนะคะ so the next question I would like to ask you is as a community builder how do you foster that growth and engagement
So I think this question would come back to the shared value that I mentioned. So we also had a recent panel among a lot of these like DAO, kind of co-founders. And what we see with Web3 basically is how we can actually program and also design the value and the journey for people to tap on the values in the community. So for example, I think with the current existing applications, basically there are a lot of these predefined value touch point, so basically if you go to an app, like a mobile app with an e-commerce, so you can get some rewards whenever you make a purchase, when you refer a friend, or you can when you let's say when you buy a lot of stuff and when you post your review on a certain page, then you will get rewarded. But basically this is like pretty much predefined, and if you go into this space as a Web2 player, there's little room for innovation for you, just to create more values for the users. Should I stop for you to make translation, or should I continue?
that's fine please go ahead
Okay. So I think with Web3, for instance, the beauty of it is that you can basically design a lot of these value touch points, beyond, like, let's say differently from the Web2 space. So for example, with an e-commerce kind of app on Web3, for example, basically right now, there's no kind of centralized platform, but everyone can come in there and join as a vendor. And let's say you as the platform provider, or as, let's say, for example, in our case, what we can do is actually we can use our token economy to incentivize everyone to come in here and build the platform. So it doesn't stop just for purchasing. People get rewarded by contributing to the platform, by developing to the codes, by setting up their stall, their e-stalls in there, by referring other people, by providing contents, inviting people to come in, referring more purchases. So I think with pretty much with the fostering of the community, it has to come back to this kind of value, how you would be able to define where people can actually get the value and incentives out of the platform. And once you can publish this, you have a very clear governance structure to make sure that people get reward automatically and of course transparently whenever they do something right. I think based on this, pretty much you can actually build a ongoing self-sustaining and also like evolving ecosystem and community.
So as someone who has been working with Web3 industries, for newcomers as well as professionals in the Asia Pacific region, how would you describe the Web3 community in this region?
I think with Asia Pacific, but pretty much with Web3, we don't have, I think we don't have to constrain to a certain location right now. Even in our community, we call it APAC DAO, but I'm pretty sure we also have members from across other platforms, because value is the main language and it doesn't discriminate people. It doesn't discriminate based on the culture or based on the market. And I think this is also one of the beauties of Web3 when you come into this space. As long as you can demonstrate your values and your differentiators to the users, basically you can also absorb, you can acquire and entice more users into this. But pretty much with APAC, of course, I think there are a couple of elements to it. So first of all, I think with APAC, still people do value, like local partnership or also like physical connections. I think this might be also prevalent anywhere, but with Asia Pacific, what I can see is that basically a lot of the connections here are still pretty much referral based. And if we use that kind of connection to our own advantage, so for example, building a community with verified members for DAO or for a Web3 community, that will create a much bigger impact than just having like a, kind of an open casual community where everyone can join. So with Web3, for example, we can have different level of engagement. And for example, with Discord, basically you can manage people based on their tier of contributions. So we have a user base, for example, on Telegram and other platforms. But once it gets to a certain stage, if you want to deliver more values to the more active core members of the community, that's where we can actually build this kind of, pyramid and kind of defining different tier of engagement and reward people based on that. So basically, I think with APAC, at the moment, as far as I see, we are trying to build a partnership with each of the community here, pretty much understand what are the key players, with each of these country. And then from there, we can actually build this kind of, different network of partners. And this is also another leverage for us to grow our APAC DAO in a much more, I would say, trustworthy, in a much more reliable way. Other than that, of course, I think with APAC at the moment, I think the gamify sector is definitely at the center of development. But I think given the current kind of market correction and with the gamify sector, so I've seen that a lot of the other projects, they are trying to, to reach out, to explore other areas of development. So we're talking a lot about like different infrastructure projects right now on privacy, interoperability. We're also talking about different areas of sustainability, for example, with ESG. And other than that, we're also exploring a lot, I think, on the DeFi sector, although it's not doing as great as before. But I think there's still a lot of innovation in the decentralized space because there's still so much to do with decentralized identity, with finance, and with other kind of applications. So I'm pretty bullish about what we can do here in APAC. And as far as I know, this still accounts for at least like 60 or 70% of the businesses of a lot of the projects that I have met.
Okay, so earlier we were talking about digital economy hub. Do you think any countries in Southeast Asia has the potential in this?
Okay, I think this is also a tricky question. Whenever everyone would ask us, like, what is the go-to country, right, when it comes to Asia Pacific? So in my opinion, I think the current practice, and I think it has not changed drastically over the past couple of years, is that a project right now, they tend to be more international, more regional. So they don't want to stick with a certain market. Even with us, for example, there are a lot of projects coming out of Vietnam, but they would not want to stick with the Vietnam brand because it does give them much more advantage if they can appear, they can present themselves as an international kind of company. So what they would normally do is that they would set up different offices in different countries to tap in, let's say, the resources and also into the advantages that each of those countries has to bring. So for example, I think for us right now, what we are doing is that we normally have an entity in Singapore because basically that's the country with the most open kind of environment. We can actually have an entity there to raise funds, to receive the funding, and pretty much in Singapore, Hong Kong, so that we can just work with traditional equity investors and get connected with the other ecosystem players. So I think most recently, then Dubai is also kind of rising, is another rising star. And it's actually also becoming very crypto friendly. So these countries are becoming more or less like, like the hub for a lot of these big businesses. But when it comes to operations, I would say that a lot of the Southeast Asian countries have a bigger advantage in terms of affordability, in terms of, let's say, talent resources. So Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand, for example. So these countries are great in terms of, I think, the resources for the projects to build up. But on the other hand, the population, the market here is also very tech savvy, very young, and also like big enough for a lot of the companies to come here and experiment and also like to promote the projects. So I think there's not like a one size fit all kind of model or kind of hub for companies to tap in, but depending on what kind of objectives or what kind of goals you are after. But I would suggest that whatever you're doing, it's also very critical, very imperative to have some local partnership to support you with different agenda in different countries. And in my opinion, ASEAN or Asia, it looks huge and it's also very diverse in terms of approaches. So there's no one size fit all kind of approach when you want to tap into this market. You have to spend effort. You have to go out there and build the connections with the local players so that you can actually, gain more footprint in this area.
Well, as for Web3, but let's talk about Web2. We all know that as the Web2 and all the social media, people think that, this technology kind of isolated people. Do you think that when Web3 comes, I mean, it's already came, but, do you think that as a Web3 community builder, do you see the risk of history repeating itself?
History repeating itself, meaning that we would have to suffer from more bearish kind of movements.
Maybe we'll be more isolated or
isolation.
Everything has
Okay.
pros and cons.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I think, well, you and I are both in crypto, so I think we can definitely tell, today and tomorrow might be totally different, right? So there's nothing that can just stay the same, especially when we talk about innovation and technology. So a technology today might become like obsolete, might become obscure tomorrow, and maybe in the next 10 years or so, like with Bitcoin still, it's still after 10 years, it's still also very hard to kind of crack with a lot of the people out there. And of course, not a lot of people know about the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain technology, for example. So I think, in my opinion, I have seen that, of course, people are being more skeptical, but it doesn't stop the migration, or let's say the incoming flow of interest of Web2 people in this space. I can see a lot of my friends even they started to just explore Web3, and now they are fully on board with Web3 because they can see so much room for growth in this space. So what I see, Web3 is that basically, if you just stick with the Web2 or traditional models, there's not much you can do in terms of innovation. I mean, if you really want to do something different, if you really want to get out of that kind of wheel, basically, I think Web3 is actually the place to go, because that's where the abundance of resources and the connections and the collaboration would be able to underpin, your upcoming growth of startup. I myself, I mean, I've been doing, I think, like in a lot of areas, working with corporates. But then when it comes to starting up with blockchain, for example, it's actually like a whole different kind of area, a whole different experiment and exercise. And there's no way that you can actually repeat this kind of exercise with the Web2 space, talking about the level of connections, the level of commitment, and the level of interoperability that you have with so many people, so many verticals. I think this is something very inherent and also very distinct about Web3 itself. So I do agree that basically this is just the start of Web3. Still, everyone is very new to the space. But this is definitely one of the extra avenue of opportunities for people if they want to do something different. And I think, in my opinion, we've been living in a very, I think, centralized world where everyone is just like kind of doing their own thing. Everything is very specialized. When it comes to bringing these specialized people all together, let's say in a DAO, in a community, or in a Web3 kind of project, basically you're allowing people to do what they like and do what they are good at. But people can actually share a core value or co-own a startup on an idea. And this is going to be so much more impactful than, just a normal kind of model. And in my opinion, this is definitely like the way to go, because basically, when you look around, a lot of the areas, this is also winter for tech industry as well. So I would assume that the crypto winter is not as bad. But then when everything is kind of stagnating, everything is stalling, then collaborating and moving forward with something different, like with Web3, creating different values, I think that's the way to go, no matter what.
So, as your background is in gaming, so what are your suggestions for community building in order to other Metaverse platform and other services?
So I think with gaming and Metaverse, especially with gaming, a lot of people have already mentioned about getting back to the basics, right? So it's not about earnings model anymore, but it's about building a great users or gamers experiences, building a good core product, and of course, like building a genuine kind of community, especially interesting. Now that we're considering that basically this is not Web 2 and Web 3 anymore. We are trying to kind of get closer to the other. So I think with community builders in this kind of area, we should not really target the lower hanging fruits of crypto users anymore. But then it's going to be a much bigger exercise for you to engage with the Web2 gaming communities out there. And as I mentioned, so a lot of the projects, they have promised a lot of these kind of benefits for the community members. So let's say ownership, voting, also like deciding on, let's say, the gameplay or the game design, for example. and making sure that, of course, the gamers are part of the game. So I think right now they just have to walk their talk, deliver those kind of milestones, keep the community updated on what they are doing, and I think keep building on the product itself. Another way that I see is that collaboration is also like another way for us to do this. Before, it's more about partnership. But I think for now, it's not just partnership, but collaborating with different areas, different projects. For example, for us, we are also working with different Metaverse, NFT lending protocols, also NFT marketplaces. We're even talking with other areas like traditional gaming to see if there's any interoperability between our game and their games, for example. So let's say I would think that, of course, I like delivering, let's say these promises on the engagement for the gamers and collaborating with other projects. This is some of I think that one of the more affordable way, just to keep building in this bear market.
So last, what would be your suggestions to the Web3 professionals in the effort to contribute to building a community? Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm in the right position to advise the Web3 professionals, because I'm actually also like an avid kind of learner in the space.
Maybe based on your experience?
What I've seen. Sure. Yeah, but let's say based on my experience, so I've been doing community building for blockchain since 2015. So I've been through a lot of these kind of heights, starting with ICO and then DeFi, and then we have NFTs, we have gaming, and now it's around Web3. So basically the hype just come and go. But pretty much what's left of all of those trends are what kind of use cases and what kind of products, do make sense and are rational or resonate with the user's experience or with the user's, kind of goal, with the user's objective. So I think from what I've been doing, I think the community basically, especially in this kind of area, so I think they have become much smarter. So before, I think with ICO, it has been a long way since ICO. So the users, they are more educated right now, and they're also kind of more keen to explore what they can do as a community member. So I think with the Web3 space right now, and especially with Web3 projects, I think, we talk about engagement, but that has to be drilled down into specific actions, what you want to engage the community for. What are some of the transparent governance structure that you have out there to make sure that everyone is rewarded based on the contribution? I think also there needs to be like an open mechanic as well, to onboard people, to really kind of get them to contribute. And based on that, pretty much, kind of recognize people and build up this kind of different tiers of engagement and also different tiers of kind of governance within the community itself. I do believe that once with enough education and also with enough transparency, the community can actually do so much more, than just someone who buys your product or who raises fund for your product, who invests in your product. They can actually be your co-creators of the project and also like sincere advocates for the project in the long run. So yeah, I think communication, transparency, and definitely engagement with the community should be the key.
Also, the core values that all the members share together.
Yes, co-creators, defining that, enough communication, transparency, right, making sure that everyone is heading towards that direction.
Right. So thank you very much for such informative information, and thank you very much for joining our events for today. And I wish you to have a great evening. Thank you for joining.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kunina.
Thank you.
ขอบคุณค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ
Thank you, everyone.